In the deepest archives of European history lies a story so extraordinary and tragic that it reads like a dark fairy tale. Imagine a princess born with an inbreeding coefficient so extreme it exceeded what would result from a parent-child union. A young woman whose very existence defied the odds, yet whose brief life would help trigger the most devastating war Europe had seen in generations. This is the story of Maria Antonia of Austria, not the Marie Antoinette you know, but a forgotten princess whose 23 years carried the weight of empires. Born in 1669 as the most inbred Habsburg in history, she survived when she shouldn't have, endured when she could not escape, and died when Europe needed stability most. To understand Maria Antonia's story, we must first grasp the impossible world she was born into. The House of Habsburg had conquered much of Europe not through warfare but through calculated strategic marriages. Their motto was simple: let others wage war, you, happy Austria, marry. But by 1669, this policy had created something unprecedented in royal history. When Maria Antonia drew her first breath at the Hofburg Palace in Vienna on January 18, she carried within her the accumulated genetic burden of centuries of intermarriage. Her father, Leopold I, Holy Roman Emperor, had married his own niece, Margaret Theresa of Spain. The web of consanguinity ran deeper still. Her maternal grandparents were uncle and niece. She was quite literally the most inbred member of the most inbred dynasty in European history. Yet here lies the first miracle of her story: she lived. While Charles II suffered from the characteristic Habsburg jaw, developmental delays, and countless ailments that left him barely able to govern, Maria Antonia defied every genetic prediction. She was described as intelligent, cultured, and relatively healthy. She spoke multiple languages, shared her parents' passion for music, and displayed the refined manners expected of a Habsburg princess. She was the exception that proved the rule, a genetic anomaly who would become a political catalyst. But her survival came at a terrible cost that revealed the true horror of Habsburg genetics. She was the only child of her parents' marriage to reach adulthood. Her older brother Ferdinand had died before her birth. Two younger siblings, John and Maria Anna, perished in infancy, unable to withstand the genetic burden they carried. The pattern was heartbreakingly consistent across the Habsburg line. Her mother, Margaret Theresa, endured 6 pregnancies in 6 years, suffering multiple miscarriages and watching 3 of her 4 children die young. The physical and emotional toll was devastating. When Margaret Theresa herself died in March 1673 at just 21, 4-year-old Maria Antonia found herself thrust into an impossible position. She was now the heiress presumptive to the Spanish throne, the most powerful empire on earth. Her uncle Charles II of Spain was childless and, given his severe disabilities, unlikely to produce an heir. Suddenly this little girl carried the future of 2 continents in her bloodline. The political implications were staggering. European powers watched her every move, calculating strategies around her potential reign. Diplomats scrutinized her health, her education, her every public appearance. She lived under a microscope, a child whose genetic lottery ticket had made her the most valuable political asset in Europe. Her father, Leopold I, understood this value all too well. The impossible marriage proposal. In 1676, when Maria Antonia was just 6 years old, her father proposed a match so shocking it stunned even the Habsburg court, notorious for unconventional unions. She should marry her own uncle, Charles II of Spain. The plan was to unite the Austrian and Spanish Habsburg lines, ensuring the empire's continuity through the most direct bloodline possible. Even in a family where uncle-niece marriages were common, this raised eyebrows. Charles II was 13, already showing signs of the genetic disorders that would plague his life. He could barely chew due to his deformed jaw and suffered numerous health problems. Maria Antonia was a child of 6. The age gap was problematic, but the genetic implications were terrifying. The engagement was formally discussed, but fate, and Spanish desperation, intervened. Charles II, under pressure to produce an heir immediately, could not wait for his 6-year-old niece to reach marriageable age. The plan was abandoned, and he married Marie-Louise d'Orleans instead, a decision that would ultimately reshape European history. The jeweled inheritance. As Maria Antonia grew into adolescence, she inherited a collection of magnificent jewels from her mother's estate, carrying political significance. Among them was a notable piece from Margaret Theresa's deathbed bequest, a great breast ornament with a large diamond, specifically left to Leopold I and later associated with the family's treasures. Her collection included spectacular emeralds from her mother's Spanish dowry, ropes of pearls, and diamond-encrusted brooches representing alliances across Europe. Each piece told a story of power and diplomacy. When she wore these jewels, she was making statements about legitimacy and inheritance rights, portable symbols in the high-stakes game of succession politics. The Loveless marriage. In 1685, at age 16, Maria Antonia married Maximilian II Emanuel, Elector of Bavaria, in a ceremony that glittered with political promise but lacked genuine affection. It was a strategic alliance to strengthen Habsburg claims to Spain while bringing Bavaria into the Austrian sphere. But it was also a personal disaster. Contemporary accounts describe the couple as fundamentally incompatible. Maximilian was extroverted, militarily ambitious, and prone to court intrigue. Maria Antonia was serious, devout, and intellectual, preferring books to balls and finding court frivolity exhausting. The incompatibility became apparent almost immediately. Maximilian openly paraded mistresses, while Maria Antonia endured the cold formality of Bavarian court life. When he was appointed governor of the Spanish Netherlands in 1692, he departed for Brussels with his mistress, leaving his pregnant wife behind in Vienna, a deliberate public humiliation. By then, the marriage had produced two tragic losses. Leopold Ferdinand, born in May 1689, lived only 2 days. Anton, born in November 1690, died at birth or shortly after. The pattern seemed set. Even Maria Antonia's remarkable survival could not overcome the accumulated genetic burden when combined with the stress of an unhappy marriage. The miracle and the tragedy. Then came October 28, 1692. Against all odds, Maria Antonia gave birth to a healthy son, Joseph Ferdinand of Bavaria. The child's birth was celebrated across Europe as miraculous. Here was the heir who could resolve the Spanish succession crisis peacefully, a compromise candidate with Habsburg blood through his mother, but Bavarian independence through his father, acceptable to powers fearing French or Austrian dominance. Charles II of Spain eventually named Joseph Ferdinand his heir in his will. The Treaty of The Hague in 1698 designated the 6-year-old as the future King of Spain, with European powers agreeing to support his claim. For a brief moment, it seemed Maria Antonia's son might prevent the continental war everyone feared. But her triumph was heartbreakingly brief. Childbirth in the 17th century was perilous, and she had endured years of stress, unhappiness, and the physical strain of multiple difficult pregnancies. Postpartum infection set in, what we now recognize as a common and often fatal complication in that era. On December 24, 1692, 23-year-old Maria Antonia took her final breath in the Hofburg Palace where she had been born. She had survived the genetic odds, navigated treacherous European politics, and produced the heir the continent desperately needed. But she would never see her son grow up, never know that her brief life had created a fleeting moment of hope. The final act of defiance. Even in death, Maria Antonia showed strength and political acumen. In her final will, she disinherited her unfaithful husband, leaving her jewels, possessions, and, most importantly, her Spanish succession rights directly to her infant son. By bypassing Maximilian, she ensured Bavarian claims rested solely with Joseph Ferdinand. If her son died before reaching majority, her possessions would pass to her father Leopold I, a final rebuke to the man who had made her life miserable. Her jewels, including notable diamonds and other treasures later linked to the Wittelsbach collection, were catalogued and preserved for her son. One such stone, a famous blue diamond, would later pass through various royal hands and sell at auction in 2008 for over $24 million. But the child's fate proved even more tragic. In February 1699, at just 6 years old, Joseph Ferdinand died suddenly of smallpox in Brussels. Some whispered of poison, though nothing was proven. With his death, Europe's last hope for peaceful succession vanished. The war that followed. Maria Antonia's death had removed one key figure from the Spanish succession. Her son's death 6 years later eliminated the last peaceful solution. When Charles II of Spain died in November 1700, Europe erupted into the War of the Spanish Succession, a 13-year conflict that claimed hundreds of thousands of lives and redrew the continent's map. The French Bourbons ultimately claimed the Spanish throne, ending Habsburg rule in Spain forever, but at enormous cost. All because a young woman who shouldn't have lived then died too soon. Had Maria Antonia lived longer, had Joseph Ferdinand survived to adulthood, the course of European history might have been different. The war might never have happened, saving countless lives and preserving a fragile balance of power. The scattered legacy. Maria Antonia's material legacy scattered across Europe, much like her genetic inheritance. Her jewels, including that renowned blue diamond, passed through royal collections before entering private hands. But her true legacy lies in the historical chain reaction her brief life created. She was the genetic anomaly who survived impossible odds, the political catalyst who briefly offered Europe peace, and the tragic figure whose death helped unleash a continental war. Her story demonstrates how individual lives, no matter how short, can alter history in ways that echo through centuries. Maria Antonia of Austria lived just 23 years, but those years held enough drama, tragedy, and significance for several lifetimes. She was born carrying the heaviest genetic burden in European royal history, yet defied predictions to become an intelligent, cultured woman who briefly held the fate of empires in her hands. Her story reminds us that behind every historical statistic lies a human being, a young woman who loved music, endured an unhappy marriage, mourned her lost children, and died far too young. She was simultaneously the most inbred princess in history and one of its most consequential figures, a walking contradiction who embodied both the triumph and the tragedy of the Habsburg dynasty. In the end, Maria Antonia's greatest tragedy wasn't her genetics or her marriage. It was timing. She lived just long enough to offer Europe hope, then died just soon enough to help plunge it into war. Her son's brief life extended that hope for 6 precious years before extinguishing it forever, leaving a continent to settle the Spanish succession through blood and steel. Today, when we read about the Wittelsbach diamond or the War of the Spanish Succession, we are witnessing the ripple effects of one extraordinary life. Maria Antonia of Austria, the most inbred princess in history, proved that sometimes the most unlikely people shape the course of nations, not through grand actions, but through their very existence and the precise timing of their departure from this world. Her diamonds may have scattered, her empire may have fallen, but her story endures as a testament to the complex interplay between genetics and destiny, between personal tragedy and historical consequence.